Welcome to This Explainer. Let's just jump right into it because today we're exploring a truly fascinating theme. The idea that the most valuable things in life, in business, and in our communities are often completely hidden in plain sight. You know, we spend so much of our time looking for those obvious wins, right? The shiny new opportunities. And in the process, we completely miss the extraordinary potential sitting literally right under our noses. So today, we're going to dig into two powerful narratives from our source material that prove sometimes you really just need a change of perspective to strike gold.
But first, I've got to ask you a somewhat weird question. What does a hidden family secret have in common with a pile of rejected vegetables? I know, it sounds like the setup to a bizarre joke, but it's actually the entire foundation of our explainer today. We're going to take a journey that connects a literal, suspenseful hunt for clues in a dark forest straight into a brilliant community-changing business innovation in a small rural village. Section 1. The Search for Hidden Secrets. Our sources start us off with a pretty intense narrative. It begins with a young orphan girl who arrives at her aunt's house, only to find it eerily quiet. But wait, there are fresh footprints in the wet mud outside, stopping right at the front door. She goes inside, and she finds a freshly prepared meal. Now, what makes this so captivating is that the food smells exactly like her late mother's cooking. This single, highly unexpected discovery sparks this intense search for the truth about her father, who mysteriously disappeared 10 long years ago.
Let's actually track her tense, step-by-step journey here as she pieces together a trail of cleverly disguised clues. Her father left these to protect his legacy from the people after him. It starts with a mysterious scar her father left on her aunt's hand the night he fled. That clue leads her to a hill temple, where a hidden box reveals a map and a pendant. Following that map, she journeys to a cave, meets her father's old confidant, and finds a compass. Finally, that compass guides her deep into the forest, across a river, to a final lockbox hidden under a very specific stone. It's like a giant puzzle. The father's ultimate legacy wasn't just sitting out in the open, it was carefully, deeply hidden. The crucial takeaway here? Valuable things are often hidden completely out of sight. Just like the physical treasure and the long-lost truths that young girl hunted for in the forest, discovering true worth requires looking way past the surface. It takes effort, it takes curiosity, and honestly, a refusal to accept things exactly as they appear. And that metaphorical bridge leads us perfectly into the main focus of our explainer today. Section 2, Uncovering Value in the Discarded. Okay, let's pivot to our second story, which is an absolute masterclass in this exact concept, and a beautiful look at Gauri's journey toward rural success. Meet Gauri. She lives in a modest rural village where agriculture is the absolute lifeblood of the community. Well, one morning, Gauri made an observation that would end up changing her entire village. She realized her community was literally throwing its treasure away. Farmers were harvesting their fields, and perfectly good food was just being tossed into piles of waste. This brilliantly illustrates a huge divide in perspective. To the farmers, anything slightly deformed, crooked, or frankly just plain weird-looking was instantly thrown aside as useless. Why? Because the market wouldn't buy ugly vegetables. And let's be real, nobody goes to the market actively hunting for the most lumpy, deformed carrot they can find. But Gauri? She looked at those exact same overflowing baskets of discarded produce and saw vegetables that were fresh, nutritious, and completely fine on the inside. She saw immense, untapped potential where everyone else just saw a pile of trash. Section 3. Gauri's First Culinary Experiment. So Gauri simply couldn't stand to see this massive waste. She decided to take action. She gathered up baskets of these discarded, supposedly useless vegetables and carried them straight back to her own kitchen. She had a theory she wanted to test out. If the outside is just a little ugly, but the inside is perfectly fine, surely there's a way to transform this into something people would actually want to eat, right? Gauri's experiment was super simple, but totally revolutionary for her village. Step 1, salvage the discarded veggies. Step 2, thoroughly clean them and chop them up into tiny pieces so those visual deformities just didn't matter anymore. Step 3, cook them together with rich, aromatic spices and rice. In short, she took the village's ugly agricultural waste and turned it into a vibrant, incredibly flavorful vegetable biryani. Now, when Gauri's husband came home and tried the dish, he was completely stunned. He told her, if such good taste can come from these vegetables, then throwing them away is absolutely wrong. And that was it. That was exactly the validation Gauri needed. It proved her theory was dead on. The value was always there. It just needed the right presentation.
With her husband fully on board, she was ready to take this idea to the rest of the community. Section 4. Changing the village's mindset. But Gauri knew that just telling the farmers wouldn't work. We all know how hard it is to change someone's mind just by talking at them. She had to show them. So she made a highly strategic move. She whipped up another batch of this delicious biryani and invited the very farmers who had thrown the vegetables away over to her house. She invited them to taste the food for themselves entirely without telling them where the ingredients came from. The farmers ate the biryani, praised the incredible taste, and only then did Gauri drop the reveal. Those were the exact vegetables they had left in the dirt that very morning. The realization was immediate. As one farmer actually noted, the vegetables weren't bad. We just considered them useless. The villagers' mindset shifted in an instant. They suddenly recognized the massive economic waste happening in their own fields every single day. Section 5. Scaling through community collaboration. So, what happens when a whole village realizes they're basically sitting on a gold mine? Rapid scaling. Word of Gauri's incredible zero-waste biryani began to spread like wildfire, eventually reaching the nearby city. Suddenly, a massive bulk order comes in for a large city event. Gauri realizes instantly that this is way beyond what she can cook in her own small kitchen. There's no way she can fulfill this alone. This is where the story gets truly inspiring. The entire village mobilized into this highly coordinated assembly line. First, the farmers meticulously saved every single misshapen vegetable. Then, a small army of village women gathered to clean and prep the absolute mountain of ingredients. Next, they began cooking the biryani in massive traditional pots, known as degs. Finally, the community worked together to pack countless boxes to fulfill the city order. But listen, there was immense tension around the cooking of the very first massive deg. Cooking a small pot for your family is one thing, right? But scaling a recipe to a giant cauldron to feed a city event is a completely different ballgame. As the sources highlight, getting the flavor right in this first massive batch was absolutely going to dictate the success or failure of the whole enterprise. Everyone literally held their breath. I really want you to picture the sensory details here. The rich, spicy aroma of the cooking biryani was literally wafting through the entire village. When that first pot was finally opened, the tension just broke. They tasted it, and it was perfect. The aroma is reaching the whole village. The taste is amazing. The collective relief was palpable. The village's experiment was actually working on a commercial scale. Section 6. True treasure is shared success. That city delivery went off without a hitch. And because the product was so incredibly good, the city customers loved it. That one delivery led to repeat, even larger orders. What started as a simple kitchen experiment to salvage some ugly vegetables had permanently transformed into a thriving, community-driven business. Gauri's journey toward rural success yielded some incredibly powerful, tangible outcomes. First off, zero food was wasted in the fields, a brilliant zero-waste business model born out of pure common sense. Second, farmers received extra income for produce they previously threw in the trash. Third, fair wages were distributed to all the women workers who prepped and cooked, which gave them real financial empowerment. And finally, it created a unified, prosperous community working towards a shared goal. The real treasure wasn't just the money, it was the prosperity of the whole village. And this brings us to Gauri's incredible leadership and integrity. She didn't just hoard the profits for herself. She famously stated, "This is not just my income. Every woman who worked hard with me has a share in it." She made absolutely sure the farmers were finally paid for what was once considered trash, and she ensured that every single woman who chopped, stirred, and packed was fairly paid for her labor. She built a true ecosystem of shared success. So, to summarize the core thematic journey of today's explainer, a discarded, ugly vegetable became a village's new hope. By refusing to accept the standard perspective, by looking just a little deeper and trying a new approach, Gauri literally transformed a community's entire economy. She proved that you don't need some magical windfall to change your life. You just need to rethink the resources you already have. Which brings us to our final thought for today. The greatest treasures, whether it's a father's hidden legacy or an economic boom for a farming village, are often disguised as things others just overlook or throw away entirely. So I leave you with this question. Look at your own life, your own community, or your own business. What hidden potential are you currently throwing away? What will you uncover when you finally change your perspective?
Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and I will catch you on the next one.